All right, go ahead, Ashley.
All right, welcome everyone. As I mentioned, we've got a few more people probably joining us here in a few minutes, but that's okay. This will be available for recording. We're not going to go super crazy at the beginning, but we do want to make sure that you guys have your opportunity to have your night back. So thank you for being here. We're going to be kicking off our canine education series for 2025, which we're really excited to be doing. What we're essentially doing is providing some virtual information, some skills for you to understand, kind of more at length than we can do in person, talking really about the nitty gritty of a certain type of behavior or a certain type of way to handle a behavior that we want to be able to teach our team. So this is open to anybody on the volunteer team, on the foster team, anyone who is just interested in this, anyone who works with our dogs. You don't have to, but it's just a beneficial way to kind of stay involved with the practices that we have as well as use them on your own. So we've got Allie here, our coordinator at Detroit, if you have not met her yet, as well as Beth from our behavior team that are going to provide that information for you guys. And I will be monitoring the chat for everyone. My name is Ashley Ray. If you have not met me yet, I'll be monitoring the chat and just make sure that you guys have your questions answered. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Alrighty, everybody. So like Ashley said, this is going to be our first segment of our canine educational series. This is going to be the virtual aspect of it. We're going to first talk about positive reinforcement. This is one of our largest tools that we use with behavior modification over at Michigan Humane. So our objectives, we're going to talk about what is positive reinforcement. We're going to go over the true definition of it, the benefits of the method, excuse me. What is a marker? What is a reinforcer? Cues and lures, and then the behavior we should exhibit as volunteers while we are practicing this method of behavior modification. And we're going to do some key takeaways, and then we're going to have some times for question and answers. And like Ashley stated, Beth is on the call, and she's very knowledgeable with this form of training. So please bring all your questions. So I pulled this quote off of the internet, and I just loved the way that it kind of just enveloped what positive reinforcement and training is. So it's more than just training. Positive reinforcement isn't merely about teaching a dog new tricks or behaviors. It's about understanding their emotions and needs and communicating in a language that they understand. When you choose kindness in dog training, you build relationships based on mutual respect and love. By Western Veterinary Center. And sorry if you see my little mouse moving around, I'm just admitting people. So, what is positive reinforcement? Positive reinforcement is the introduction of a desirable or pleasant stimulus that reinforces the behavior, making it more likely that the behavior will occur again. So what does that mean? So I was just discussing this earlier. I feel like we do a lot of these things kind of as a, um, subconsciously. We do it just repetitively, right? So for example, the dog sits, the handler gives a treat. So a lot of times when people are at home with their pets, when their dog sits, they'll do the same thing or they'll say, good boy, good girl. So that is positive reinforcement as a whole. So in a high stress environment, such as the shelter, it makes it very challenging at times to shape a dog's behavior. So positive reinforcement removes those negative stimuli during our brief interactions because usually we only take a dog out for 20 to 30 minutes tops. And it provides positive ones instead of negative ones, which makes it a most positive, or which makes it the most powerful method that we can utilize in the shelter environment. I'm gonna pause because I don't know if Beth wants to add anything.
Um, you want to, you hear that song, accentuate the positive, really. So it
Mm-hmm.
really would make it more likely to occur again. So if you want to have the dog sit instead of jumping, and the dog gets rewarded for sitting and not jumping, it's more likely to occur again, which is exactly what we want.
Okay. So what are the benefits of positive reinforcement? So number one, this is the thing that we do stress entirely at Michigan Humane is we want to reduce the stress level in the dogs. The dog recognizes that only good things will happen to me during this interaction, so it wants to continue to interact with us. It feels safe. So reward-based training reduces the risk of aggressive behavior or fear-induced biting. A lot of times when dogs are fearful, it can work towards fear-induced aggression. So as Ashley is counteracting that, right? Reduces behavioral issues. So many behavioral issues are fear-induced from misunderstanding. Positive reinforcement alleviates this fear over time by promoting understanding and trust. So the dog is learning to trust humans. It's learning that nothing bad is going to happen to them, because a lot of times in the shelter environment, they are either a stray animal, it could be a court case where, some negative stimuli has been happening to them repeatedly. It could be not enough social interaction, right? So this is help reducing those effects. And then it creates a bond and trust between humans and the handler. So trust is built between the people and the dog, not necessarily just persons. So this will decrease fear with new people and new interactions with people in the future. So as more volunteers work with said one dog, we're gonna, for example, Guapo at our Detroit shelter, he has a little bit of fear issues, right? So as more people start to work with him and he realizes that people are not such a bad thing, that fear will start to reduce over time.
Allie, I'd love to share something there if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good spot for it, and I apologize if this is something that you'll discuss a little bit later, but I think something
Oh,
that
no
we
worries.
stress, I think something that we stress quite a bit with our volunteers, and it is a hard concept to grasp, is that a lot of this positive reinforcement is not about the end goal. It's not about like treating them as much as you can so that they want to come outside with you, even though they're telling you they're scared. Sometimes the positive reinforcement can be that you didn't take them out at all, but you listen to them. So they go, oh, that person was nice to me and I told them I really didn't want to come out of my kennel and they gave me a few treats and then they left me alone. And the positive reinforcement there is I got left alone when I asked for it. So just to keep that in mind, that that's part of the trust building too. It might not be the end goal that you want from the day, but it could be the end goal that the dog itself wants from the day.
Thank you for adding that, Ashley. Yes, I am going to talk a little bit more. Yes, we do need to respect the dog's boundaries. They will communicate what they need and what they want, and it's not about what we need as a handler and want. Yes, it's beneficial for both sides of the party when we work with the animal, right? Because it helps reduce our stress levels as well. But our end goal is to make sure that all of our interactions are a positive one whenever we bring a dog out, or if, like Ashley said, they don't want to come out, right? All right, I'm going to hand this topic over to Beth because she does a better job of explaining it. And I move
Okay,
this over. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that we call a lure, and that's basically dogs don't speak English. I'll bet everybody figured that out, right? And so as they learn and grow, they can learn all kinds of words and phrases and inflections in our voices, but their primary language is body language. And so they're experts at that's how they communicate to one another, but they also read us. And so oftentimes I say, boy, you got trained really well by your dog because the dog knows your body language. But when we're teaching them something new, what we want to do is help them out a little bit. And again, let's just use an example of asking the dog to sit. We would take a little tasty little treat in our hands and we put it to the dog's nose, and then we're going to kind of lean into the dog so they kind of raise your hand up, and while the dog's rump hits the floor, we would mark that behavior and release the treat. So it's a lure to help the dog into the position without physically pushing the dog's rump down onto the floor. So once the dog understands that, wow, if I watch that hand and it goes up, my butt hits the floor, they release the treat. This is the coolest thing. So once they learn that, we're going to fade out the lure. At first, you might have to help the dog lay it down or sit or shake paw, and we would help them with just a little bit of a lure so they kind of lean into the position, and then we reward that behavior. And then we fade it out and just use the signal, and then the yes and treat and reward comes after that. So it's easier to show, but it's one of those things where, like I said, you use the lure to get the dog to understand that you want the body to move a certain way. I hope that makes sense without showing you.
Yes, Beth. Actually, I want to also touch on this. We're going to talk about more what Beth kind of where you're going to fade into another thing in one moment. But the way that she explained this to me today, I realized that I was subconsciously doing this while I was working with dogs. When you hold a treat up or whatnot and asking the dog to sit, you're kind of luring, like Beth was saying, them to do the action that you want to do. And we're going to talk about next, if it would move. There we go.
There we go.
It doesn't want to participate sometimes. So when you use the treat to lure the dog to sit, right? The dog's paying attention to you. You're leading them into a sit. So when the dog sits, a marker is being used, right? So a marker is a word or sound used while learning the certain behaviors. It communicates to the animal that what they are doing at the precise moment was the right thing to do. So Beth always emphasizes using the word yes to mark that behavior, but you also can use a clicker. Now, the issue for me with a clicker is sometimes our brain doesn't want to communicate with our hand to click that clicker exactly when that behavior happens. So you're going to miss the mark. So that can cause the dog a little bit of confusion, right? So I like to use the word yes. Sometimes you can do a clicking sound in your mouth. I can't really do that. But Beth does it a lot. And when that happens and the dog learns, like, okay, I'm going to sit, we're marking the behavior, we're going to reinforce that behavior. So a reinforcer is something that causes the animal to increase the rate of behavior. So that can be the treat. It could be a toy because some dogs are not food motivated, or touch, depending on what the dog enjoys. Some dogs really love being touched. So like a scratch underneath the chin or a pat could be exactly what the dog needs to help reinforce that behavior and shape it. All right. I gave
Just a quick note about the clicker too. I agree. I think that in the shelter environment, sometimes there's so many distractions that it's easier just to do an emphatic yes instead of the click. And believe it or not, some dogs are afraid of the clicker. You can click or kissy noise with your mouth. Some people like to do that, and that's fine. It's not a problem, but sometimes it's kind of cumbersome because you have the treat in your hand, you have maybe the leash in your hand, and you have the clicker in your hand. Doesn't mean I don't like the clicker. I love it, but sometimes in the shelter environment, it might be a little much.
Yeah. And then, like I said, missing the exact moment when you want when that behavior happens, sometimes that is missed with the clicker. So you kind of have to become an expert with the clicker, and it could be rather frustrating for you with marking that exact moment, and it could be frustrating with the dog because they're like, if you miss the moment and you click the clicker, they're like, what are you trying to tell me? So it could be very frustrating. So you gotta really get precise with it. Why is it not working? There we go. All right. So next we're going to talk about cues. So a cue is a signal that we give to the animal or the dog right before we want them to perform a known behavior. So for example, we say lay down, and the dog lays down because they have already learned what lay down means. So there's different types of cues. Cues can be verbal, so you can say come, sit, stay. That's another one. Visual, so hand signals. I do this with my own dogs at home. My dog, Duchess, she knows how to sit when I just raise my hand up and hold it flat. So I don't even have to say anything. She's learned how to react to that hand signal, and she knows exactly what it means. Event. So, for example, you pull out that leash at home, that dog knows exactly what's happening. The dog knows that we're about to go for a walk, and they get really excited, right? Beth, did you want to add anything to this?
We were talking, I was teasing a little bit about how dogs can train us. So you
Yeah.
might pick even before you touch the leash, if you go for a particular pair of shoes, I think sometimes maybe you're breathing or something. My dogs, I didn't even go to my closet and how did they know that I was planning to go to the closet to get my shoes, to get the leash and go for a walk? They already knew and they were all excited. So dogs are experts at reading us. Once they figure it out, they got it down. You don't even have to say a word.
All right. All right. So, uh-oh. Ah, it doesn't want to play. So I'm going to try to play this 2 times. Watch what Beth does. All right. So, I'm going to go over some of the things that we see. We see her lure the dog over with the hand, right? The hand motion. She wants them to get to the platform. So another thing is the visual cue, right? The hand signals. She's saying sit, the dog's sitting on the platform. And she tells the dog to let's go to get off the platform. And then she sends the dog back over with her hand signal with the verbal, right? And then as the dog sits, as soon as the dog sits and performs that action, she marks it with that treat and says yes. She marked that desired, she marks the behavior, excuse me, with her saying yes, and she reinforces it with the treat. I apologize for the confusion. So let me go ahead and play that one more time. All right. Beth, did you want to add anything to that?
The behavior that we are looking at, the platform, is really a fun thing for a high active dog, but actually we first teach the one thing at a time. So it's little increments, right? So we had to teach the dog to go to the platform first. Even if he put one foot on it, I would reinforce that behavior until I got a little bit more. Then we got to the point where he was on it. I asked him if he knew the verbal cue. He did know it. But I also used my hand signal. So those were incremental things to get him to get to it. It wasn't just like all one swoop. He knew all of that stuff, just so you understand that. It took
Well,
a few
yeah.
steps
This
to
was
get
this
all of
this
it.
this dog was worked with Beth for a little bit, and yes, everything was broken down. Dogs typically are not savvy enough to understand us completely, or like Beth said, they just understand the whole thing that happens. This was increments, just like she was saying. But what I was speaking of, Beth, is did you want to elaborate on any of the little things that you did with like your hands, your visual gestures, verbally,
Yeah.
any of that? Did you want to go into detail with those things?
Yeah, we could. So the hand signal was one of the things where I did, again, in the beginning, I lured him with a treat on the platform. I put my fingers on the platform and he got up there right away, which was nice. Sometimes it takes a little while. And so I yes and treated that, right? So that's the whole idea. And then I was able to start getting him farther away with the hand signal. I didn't even have a treat in my hand, went to the table, then I added the sit once he got up there. So again, it's all incremental, but I started with first luring him onto the platform. Then I worked with the hand signal. He figured it out. He was a brilliant boy. He was amazing. I was able, in one session, I was able to teach him the whole sequence. So pretty amazing little guy. But he was motivated, right? He was motivated to learn. He was an action-packed dog. And we also had, he really liked the treats.
All right. So how can you talk a little bit of how this really positively impacts his stress levels
Yes, of
while
course.
he's here?
And again, the positive reinforcement, when we bring a dog into the room and we're going to work with them in our BMOD squad or any of the behavior people that go through the training, is first of all, we want to get to know the dog. and then see what he needs. We always leave toys out. We leave a few treats on the floor for him to sniff around. Sniffing is huge. And we kind of learn about the dog. And then we find out, what do you need? What do you like? What motivates you? Then we start working with that. So now this dog was very, very active. He wasn't into toys, but he wanted to learn. And we said, okay, well, let's see if he likes to get on the platform. A lot of dogs that like to jump up and they're really, really aroused, the platform is really kind of a novel thing and they can learn it very quickly. And it's using his brain, because, right, if we don't use our brain, it goes to mush as well, right? So physically and mentally, we're stimulating the dog, and the dog is into it and really wants to play the game. If he didn't want to play the game, we would do something different. And he was went back a lot more relaxed and happy to go back to his crate or his kennel when we were done.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has attended a reset session, but I do recommend that you do. It is very satisfying for me personally, because when the dogs first come into the room, sometimes they're a little bit fearful. Sometimes they have some arousal bit happening, and usually by the end of their session with us in that room, they go back to their kennel so much more relaxed. So this positive reinforcement makes such an impact on each of these dogs. All right, so volunteer behavior. So what do we need to do? What do volunteers need to exhibit while they are performing this training method? So let's talk about that a little bit. So first, be patient. Stress and behavior problems are a part of the equations. Volunteers need to be patient while working with the dogs and make sure not to push them past their threshold during a session. So, perfect example, we talked about Guapo, and Ashley made a very, very important point. If Guapo really didn't want to come out of his kennel, we're going to give him some treats and thank you for trying, right, to, interact with us. If he does want to come out of the kennel and he might want to go into Hoffley or the PEC room to do a little bit of interaction, we're not going to push him and try to get him to do something that he's not comfortable doing. We're going to take it by his strides. Kindness. Kindness will allow the dog to view you as a friend and not a foe, allowing for a deeper connection during the session. And then have confidence. So dogs naturally follow those with confidence. That's just a natural thing that's embodied in them. And those who are apprehensive can cause the opposite effect and make the dog nervous. And then also with having confidence, you're also are paying attention to the dog as well. And again, not pushing the dog past its threshold and being patient with them. Be clear. So dogs do not have the same language as us. So we're going to give them clear directions. And not ask too much at one time. Unfortunately, consistency is not a thing that we're able to completely embody at the shelter because everybody does things a little bit differently, and the dog's not consistently getting out, right? So the dog can get confused. So we have to make sure that we're clear and concise of what we want the dog to do, and then also pay attention to those thresholds, making sure we're not pushing them past that. And then also have have grace with the dog and allow the dog to kind of figure things out, right? Dogs have different levels of understanding and intelligence, just like people do. And sometimes this dog might get it right away. The next dog that you work with, it might take a couple tries, right? And then follow through. Once the dog understands what we wanted them to do, repeat the action and start to shape that and reinforce it with treats, reinforce it with touch if that's their jam, or reinforce it with some toys.
I would love to add on to a couple things there real quick, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
Allie.
yeah, go ahead.
So I'm always going to play what I don't want to know if I want to call it devil's advocate. I'm going to always play the volunteer coordinator role, I guess. When we talk about having confidence, I'm sure you guys are aware, but just to reiterate for anybody who's unfamiliar with this, that doesn't mean just whip open a kennel and start taking a dog out. those other things need to come into play when you're spending time with them. That you are being aware of their body language. Yes, have confidence, but don't have so much confidence that you're ignoring signs that you might be seeing or things like that. And then I like how Allie said to give them grace.
Uh-oh, you cut
Uh-oh.
out, Ashley. Uh-oh, Ashley.
Oh, no.
Uh, oh,
You
well,
just
I want to,
Uh-oh. Are you back?
okay. With the confidence, I'm not stating that you go in there with guns blazing, right, to like she said, open a kennel door and drag the dog out. That's not what I'm saying. What I mean by have confidence is read the room, know what's happening, and have confidence in the action that you should take, right? Dogs really read when we're apprehensive about things, and it can make them feel even more fearful, right? So that's what I mean by having confidence within yourself. So if a dog is aroused, right, and it kind of like makes us go into a little bit of a frenzy instead of like, redirecting the dog and having confidence with that. Or, let's go back to the kennel or whatnot. Those are the things that I'm talking about with having confidence with yourself as a volunteer.
Good
I think
point.
we're still missing Ashley.
Yeah.
I'm
Beth,
so
did you want to
sorry.
add to
I think I got it.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can now.
Did you
Okay.
hear what I stated, Ashley?
Yes. Oh yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And
Okay.
I don't think that was not what you were saying. I just wanted to clarify in case anybody was unfamiliar with these talks that we've had like multiple times.
Yeah.
So just the thing that I really wanted to quickly say about the grace thing is that the biggest thing to keep in mind when we're trying to do these different little tricks or things with them in the shelter, if we, it's not required, of course, for you to do any of these extras of like putting them, in a playroom and teaching them how to shake your hand or anything like that. But we always want to keep in mind that the ultimate goal is to give them enrichment and stimulation and time with people. So we're not requiring our volunteers to like make these really well-behaved dogs, these really militant dogs that are just going to follow every rule. That is not at all what we're trying to do with these type of things. These are more like if you're interested in doing them and you want to test them out, you want to learn more from our team. And really it's for those dogs who maybe need that engagement or need some more, kind of just understanding their environment and understanding working with people so that they can do well in a home environment. So that's where the grace comes in. You might have dogs that are, totally okay with doing this, and other ones who are like, this is a lot of fun to get up on this table. And then there's other ones that that's not their cup of tea, and that's totally okay across the board.
Yeah. And also, like what Beth was doing in the recess, again, we're not asking you guys to do all those type of things. Positive reinforcement too can just be you having the dog not jump up on the glass or the front of the kennel door and having them all four paws on the floor and waiting for that action to happen, and then rewarding that with a treat before you loop them. That's positive reinforcement. And that's something that we practice every day when we take the dog out. Positive reinforcement can also be not jumping up on somebody when you interact with it, like if another volunteer approaches you, or a member of the community trying to, come in looking for an adoptable animal and having all four on the floor, that's positive reinforcement and you're rewarding that. So yes, we do a little bit more fun things at our recess sessions, but you can utilize this with just the simple things that you do as while you walk a dog around our properties.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Next one. So, key takeaways. Be mindful of what we are asking the dog to do. Dogs communicate differently than humans. I'm going to keep on saying that. They do not understand all of our languages, right? There are more keen to our body language more than what our verbiage is. Be mindful of how you are presenting yourself as a handler. Like I was saying, if you're a little bit more apprehensive and you're feeling nervous, dogs pick up on that type of body language, right? Utilize the marker, the reinforcer and cues, the lure also, I forgot to add that to it, to shape the desired behavior that you want. And again, that can be as simple as all four on the floor. And that's something that we want to continue to do while they're here at the shelter. And also, don't forget to have fun. This is supposed to be a pleasurable experience for not only the dog, but also us as well. It's supposed to be a two-way street.
Very good. I want to add something to, yes, when we're just walking the dogs and let's say they're jumping around, waiting for them to four on the floor before we put the leash on, just waiting 2 seconds, whether whatever comes up must come down. As soon as they come down, the door opens and you get the dog on the leash. As you're going out the door and the dog is jumping on the glass door, we wait for those feet to hit the floor. And guess what the reward is? The reward is the door opens, right? So they're getting rewarded for the right thing, and we're marking it by opening that door when the feet hit the floor.
Perfect. All right, so this is just some of the resources that I use because I love to do my research. I love it. So this is going to be in the recording, so you can go ahead and visit those websites. And as always, it takes a community. I just want to personally thank each and every volunteer that has logged on today to learn a little bit more about dog behavior because knowledge is gold. I will continue to say that. I always want to continue learning. Beth is amazing, and I always am learning something new from her, as well as my colleagues. My colleagues also, Ashley, Kellen, Jen, they always have some tricks up their sleeve that I'm like, that's very interesting. And then each and every one of you as volunteers, you all bring something to the table, and we thank you all for being invested in our effort with getting all these dogs a beautiful home. So now we're going to turn it over to questions. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to come off camera. Don't judge me. So you can see me.
Oh, look, she's so pretty.
Okay. All right, so we're going to open up the floor for questions. So me, Ashley, and Beth are going to answer questions. So please feel free to come off of mute and ask away.
Doesn't look
No,
like we have
no.
any in the chat. That's all right. That just means you guys really know this topic, which I'm glad. Let's see. Is no appropriate in some cases? Beth, I'm gonna hand that to you.
Right. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, what words do you use? What are your words? Is it, lie down, sit down, whatever. Basically when I'm working with a dog, I reinforce by talking nicely to the dog and I use their name. Sometimes they're just learning their name, right? But I don't use no because no is a general term. No what? Don't look at you. No, don't lift my leg. No what is that meaning? So if the dog is jumping on us, your response to turn away and pull your hands up so the dog doesn't get your attention for jumping up, and when the four hit the floor and we reward that behavior by now I'll touch, now I'll pet you, right? They're going to get a pet that way, is very clear that, oh, I didn't get any attention when I jumped up on her, or I didn't get any attention when I mouthed, but she showed me a toy and she got all excited when I touched the toy. So actions are louder than words for dogs. And again, in the shelter environment, so many people, people say, do you say sit? I might ask a dog if they sit, but if I teach a dog to lay down, your idea might be down is off the couch. And somebody else's idea is, something laying down. So katsi means what? It means sit in Greek. So what if a dog goes to a different and they don't understand it? So I really don't worry about the words, but no is so universal. And, a lot of people, I'm sure you guys have heard, my dog's name is No-No. No-No, because everything is a no-no, right? Well, what do you mean by that? And that's probably very confusing for the dog. That's why I don't. Teaching them what to do instead is really what you want, and reinforcing the positive, the desirable behavior, and ignoring the negative behavior as much as you can, showing them what they can do instead.
So I want to piggyback off that question. So in a sense, can we also utilize redirection to redirect the negative behavior that we're seeing, or the
Abs-
undesirable behavior, excuse me?
Absolutely. And I guess, we do generally it's positive reinforcement, but if we say let the dog jumps on us, and we turn away, we are actually taking away the anticipated reward. So it's kind of negative, right? Because no, you don't get that. But as soon as you do the right thing, you do get it, right? So it's the same concept. So you want to ignore the behavior, and then you want to redirect to say, that's okay to pick up the toy, but not to grab my arm. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think we've got another one.
Okay.
Oh,
What
is
if a puppy or a dog is jumping and biting at the same time?
Jumping and biting at the same time. So there's some exercises that we can teach. One of the things is puppies should probably be on a leash. And when we're interacting with them, we should make sure that we have appropriate toys to interact with. And so if the puppy is jumping on us and grabbing our clothes, what we're going to do is toss a toy or show the toy and toss that on the ground. And when you interact with them, I don't play tug in the shelter environment. It's too overstimulating. Is I might teach them to go get it and then make a big deal about it. It's like, what, you? That's great. And then, or you can say yes if they touch it. Again, depending on what kind of, what's reinforcing to them. If the toy is reinforcing, you make a big deal about when they touch it. If they touch you, game immediately stops. And again, the reason I don't play tug in the shelter environment is if they get so aroused and they grab the toy and they try to grip it further up, you could be an accidental bite. So I don't like to play tug in the shelter environment. Doesn't mean that it's not a great thing to teach, but it does take some structure and it takes some learning. And you want to make sure that the dog understands when you want it to drop, they have to drop. And again, in a shelter environment, it's hard to be consistent with that. So I'd rather redirect with a toy by tossing it, but having a leash to make sure that they're on the floor and they can't jump up. If they continue to jump up, there's some other examples of what we can do to keep them from jumping on us. And that would be maybe, let's say you're in a room and he keeps jumping on us. As the dog's coming toward you, you're going to toss a treat away from you so the puppy can go find the treat. And every time he comes toward you, is if he's got 4 on the floor, interact. If he doesn't, you're going to be tossing a treat or tossing a toy away from you. But you want to not let him make contact with you, because if he jumps up at you and we toss a treat, what does that teach him? I jump up and I get a treat. So you want to make sure that before he hits you with his body, you're tossing that treat away or you're tossing the toy away. And that will say, wow, when I interact with these people and I've got 4 on the floor, they're willing to play with me.
right. Right. Another tactic that we use too at the shelter, because like Beth said, we don't want to take anything from the dog because that can reinforce having resource guarding behaviors, right? So we want to do trade. So this is something that we will teach the volunteers is, for instance, if we have a toy or a ball, we'll already have one in our hand, right? And the dog will throw it. And then we'll retrieve another ball that's on the ground or something. The dog's coming back at us with their toy because they're fetching it. And we hold the ball or toy, wait for the dog to drop whatever's in their mouth, and then we go ahead and throw it. So that way we're trading with the dog. The dog realizes that we're not taking from them, we're actually adding to the fun. And then that way that avoids bite incidences as well. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh my goodness, quiet room.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you, Beth, for joining us as well. Your insight is always appreciated. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. All righty.